Hello, friend. I want to tell you about the Dacia Lodgy car. The engines are good, but lack power. In this area, Lodgy shows its origins. Although it is large, under the hood we will not find a 150 horsepower 2.0 diesel. The largest engine has a capacity of 1.6 L, and the two most powerful generate 116 horsepower. This is not counting the latest 131 horsepower version, which is still hard to describe as a used car. With a full complement of passengers, only the diesel will cope. There are 4 engines in the petrol range. The two naturally aspirated 1.6-liter units differ significantly. The MPI is a Renault unit, while the SC is a Nissan engine. The more modern 1.2 TC turbocharged engine is a design developed jointly by Renault and Nissan, and the most modern 1.3 TC is also with Mercedes. It is worth knowing, however, that both small engines are Nissan's line. Which engine should I choose for the Dacia Lodgy? First, you need to define your needs. If you expect some dynamics, then diesels are the main ones. The 1.2 TC engine gives good performance, but only if there are 1 or 2 people on board. With a family of 5 or a full complement of 7 passengers, it loses power, and here the diesel gains the advantage, which even in the 90 horsepower version offers more torque. Relatively good dynamics are offered by 1.6 engines, but only if you rev them higher. Of course, the fastest will be the Lodgy equipped with the 1.3 TC engine, but this is a variant that has entered production recently, and we are talking about a practically new car. It is also worth mentioning that most versions were fitted with a 5-speed manual gearbox, and there was never an automatic as an option. 6-speed gearboxes were paired with diesels with power from 95 horsepower upwards, and the latest 1.3 TC. The advantage of the weakest diesel is the lack of a dual-mass flywheel. Secondly, you need to determine your financial capabilities. In this respect, the number one choice is the simple 1.6 MPI engine. It does not require much maintenance, is cheap to repair, and works great when powered by autogas. Its performance is poor, but it is a donkey that will always get you to your destination. There's not much to criticize about the other petrol engines, although it's obvious that repairs to the 1.2 TC will be much more expensive than the 1.6. It's turbocharged, but contrary to appearances, it has 4 cylinders, not 3. With the right driving technique, it's the most economical. For the 1.2 engine, the average is 7L, 100 kilometers, and for the 1.6, from 7.6 to 7.9. Of course, LPG-powered units burn more. Diesels are clearly more economical. Average fuel consumption does not exceed 6 pounds, 100 kilometers, and results of around 5 pounds can be successfully achieved. The only thing is that diesel requires higher repair costs. It is also more prone to failures, although it must be admitted that it has been significantly improved compared to the first versions. It should also be assumed that the newer the engine, the more expensive the repairs, but also the lower the failure rate. More on that in a moment. So which engine should I choose? This is a difficult question that cannot be answered unequivocally. Driving itself will be just as economical with a 1.6 petrol engine as with a diesel. The risk of a more serious, more expensive failure is lower in a petrol engine, while driving a diesel is more enjoyable. It's a matter of individual preferences. What would I choose for myself? A diesel. What goes wrong with the Dacia Lodgy? Dacia Lodgy, like other budget cars, has many problems, but they are minor. Generally, it is about the lack of attention to detail and unstable electrics. Sometimes the revs fluctuate in older petrol engines. Sometimes the diesel won't start. Sometimes it lights up, but the check engine light, for no reason at all. There are cases of the multimedia system freezing or incorrect fuel level indications. These are usually minor issues that happen in every car, only more often in Dacia. Of course, as I mentioned, the cabin assembly is poor, so every now and then something will squeak, creak, and vibrate. Here and there, traces of corrosion may appear on the body and chassis. And what about more serious things? First of all, 1.2 TC engines do not cope well with driving under heavy load and a heavy driver's foot. After 100 to 150 kilometers, they can consume oil, which is a completely natural phenomenon with intensive use, while neglecting to check its level ends in engine seizure. Interestingly, this does not apply so much to, for example, Dacia Sandero, which is usually used more gently and not so heavily loaded. In this engine, the chain drive of the timing should also be checked regularly. The timing is also an area worth checking in the 1.6 SC engine. Unlike the MPI, it has a chain. This solution is supposedly more durable, but more problematic and more expensive to replace. The chain can stretch when the driver has a heavy foot and does not drive smoothly. The simpler MPI engine has a belt and should be replaced every 150 kilometers. This is where serious servicing ends. 1.5 DCI diesels are, on the one hand, quite simple and well known to mechanics' designs, but on the other hand, they are burdened with the risk of the bearings turning on the shaft and seizure. It all depends on the user. If you buy a new Dacia Lodgy and change the oil every 10 kilometers, you will most likely drive about 200 kilometers without any problems. After such a mileage, the injectors may wear out. However, when buying a used car, you never know what to expect. If someone took care of the car, there is no big worry, although there is a risk of seizure. As a preventive measure, you can replace the bearings, and it is worth doing this during a major post-purchase service, especially if you are completely unsure about the history of the car and the mileage has already exceeded about 150 kilometers. As a consolation, you can add that parts, even for a general overhaul of a 1.5 diesel, are not expensive. You will pay the same as for a preventive replacement of bearings with oil, filter, and seals, for example, for a complete set of original parts for the overhaul of the bottom of the engine, shaft, bearings, connecting rods, seals. The suspension and brake system are simple and quite durable. Therefore, they are cheap to repair. It is worth paying attention to the condition of the steering rods, which the manufacturer himself drew attention to. A service campaign has been announced for this model because with a higher load, there is a risk of the steering rod joint breaking on the steering gear side, which can lead to loss of control over the vehicle. What about LPG? Here we have three ways. You can buy a car with a factory gas installation or install it yourself. There is a third alternative way, which I will discuss in a moment. Buying Lodgy with factory autogas is a good solution because the installation is already there, the car has been prepared, and the engine is properly tuned for it. There are two disadvantages. The car has been running on gas for a long time and we have the installation that was installed. And the tank has a legalization valid for less than 10 years. The second is the factory blocking of the installation controller. In case of problems, the controller can be replaced with a non-factory one. The second way is to buy a car without installation and assemble it yourself. This is the solution I recommend the most. First of all, we choose the right manufacturer. We also have everything new, and the engine is usually in better condition when it runs only on petrol. The third way is an alternative to the first, which is to buy a car with factory autogas and, in case of problems, replace it with a new one. The advantage is that the car has already been prepared for this, so the operation only involves replacing some parts and therefore it will be quite cheap. The disadvantage is that, despite everything, the car has already been running on gas and you never know how the previous user took care of the service. It is also worth mentioning the engine suitable for LPG. Both 1.6 units were factory fitted with gas, but the older Renault MPI engine is definitely better suited for this. The main advantage is the screw valve adjustment. In the SC engine, this is already done with plates, which not only carries a 2 or even 3 times higher price for the service, but also difficulties in finding a suitable workshop that will do it. However, you can always count on ASO. Thank you for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.